The night was quiet, but the whispers from another world, they were real. Sarah had heard them, and they were calling her. But what did they want? And why her? It was just another normal night when Sarah first heard the whisper. She had been living in her small apartment in the heart of the city for almost 2 years. Nothing extraordinary ever happened. Yet, that night was different. The wind howled outside her window, the only sound breaking the stillness of her room. She was curled up in her bed, reading a book, when she heard it. A faint whisper, almost too soft to be real, but it made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. "Sarah," the voice said, barely above a whisper. She froze. Her heart raced. She glanced around her dark room, but there was no one there. The windows were closed, and the lights were off. She must have imagined it, she thought. But then, it came again. "Sarah, come closer." The voice wasn't just in her ears, it felt like it was in her mind, like someone was speaking directly into her thoughts. She sat up in bed, clutching her phone tightly. Who could it be? A prank call? But there was no way. She hadn't given her number to anyone. And the voice sounded too real. The room felt colder, the shadows seemed deeper. Her pulse quickened. She turned on her bedside lamp, hoping that would break the eerie feeling, but the whispering continued. The voice, now more urgent, beckoned her. "Come closer, Sarah. We have much to show you." She stumbled out of bed, her mind a swirl of confusion and fear. Was she losing her mind? Maybe it was sleep deprivation, she thought. But then, a sudden chill washed over her, and she knew something was wrong. The whispers didn't sound like a human voice, they were distorted, as if coming from somewhere far beyond her reach. The whisper was relentless, growing clearer with every passing second. "Listen, Sarah. You must come to us. The fate of both worlds depends on it." Her thoughts raced. Both worlds. What was going on? And who or what was speaking to her? Without another thought, Sarah grabbed her jacket and left her apartment. She needed answers. As she walked out into the dark streets, she felt a pull, a magnetic force guiding her forward. Her phone rang, but it wasn't her phone number displayed on the screen. It was just a series of random numbers. Her hands trembled as she answered the call. The whispering voice was clearer now. "We're close, Sarah. Do not resist. You are not alone." Fear gripped her heart. But she didn't hang up. Something inside her urged her to follow the voice. Something bigger was at play. As she reached the edge of the city, she found herself standing in front of an old, abandoned building. The whispers were louder now, almost deafening. Her breath caught in her throat. Was this it? Was this where the answers lay? The door creaked open as if it had been waiting for her. Inside the building, Sarah's senses were overwhelmed. The air smelled musty, and the floor creaked under her feet. But the voice, the whispers, were now a constant presence in her mind. "Come to the center of the room, Sarah. You are close." Sarah walked cautiously toward the middle of the vast, dark room. The silence was oppressive, and yet, the whispers were almost comforting now. The moment she stepped into the center, the walls around her seemed to shimmer. A bright, otherworldly light engulfed the room, and for a moment, she thought she had gone blind. But then, she saw them. At first, they appeared as vague, shadowy figures, but they soon took shape. Tall, slender beings, their bodies glowing faintly. Their faces were angular, with large black eyes that reflected an unsettling depth. They had no mouths, but the voice in her head was clearer than ever. "Sarah, you are the one we have chosen," the voice said, its tone serene yet authoritative. "We have been watching you. You are ready. Who are you? What do you want from me?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. The leader of the beings stepped forward. Its form seemed to flicker in and out of focus, as if it existed on multiple planes at once. "We are the Elandrians, beings from another world, another dimension. We have been searching for a human who can bridge the gap between our two worlds. You, Sarah, have the potential to understand us, to communicate with us. But there is more at stake than just us." Sarah's mind spun. "What do you mean?" The Elandrian's voice became more serious, almost sorrowful. "Our world is dying. And if we cannot establish a connection with yours, we will cease to exist. Your world is the only one that can save us. Sarah stood frozen, trying to process the information. She felt a strange sense of responsibility and fear. What could she do? She was just an ordinary person. We need you, Sarah, the Elandrian continued. Your mind, your consciousness, is the key. You must help us connect, help us merge our worlds before it's too late. But, why me? Why not someone else? Sarah's voice shook. The figure's eyes glowed brighter. Because you are the only one who has heard the whispers. You are the only one who is willing to listen. You are the key to our survival. Sarah's head felt like it was going to explode. She needed time to think, to understand. But the urgency in the air, the pressure building, made it clear that there was no time to waste. You must act now, Sarah, the Elandrian pressed. The others have failed. Only you can succeed. A sudden flash of memories overwhelmed her, flashes of events she didn't recognize, of places and people she had never seen. She felt her mind stretch, expand. The whispers grew louder, and for the first time, Sarah felt as if she could understand them. You are the bridge, the voice echoed, as everything went dark. When Sarah woke, she was back in her apartment, lying on her bed. Her head was spinning, and her body felt heavy, as if she had just woken up from a deep sleep. She rubbed her eyes, still unsure if everything that had happened was real or just a dream. But the whispers remained. They were faint at first, but they were there. And they were calling her again. Sarah, it's time. She stood up, feeling more certain now. The Elandrians had chosen her, but the weight of their request was still heavy on her heart. She didn't know how she could possibly save them, or her world. Could she really bridge the gap between their dying world and her own? The question haunted her as she made her way back to the abandoned building. This time, she was no longer scared. The fear had turned into determination. As she entered the room, the Elandrians were waiting for her. Their forms shimmered in the low light. You have returned, the leader said. We knew you would. We knew you were the one. Sarah nodded slowly. I'm ready. But I need to understand. How do I do this? The Elandrian extended its long, delicate hand toward her. You must make the connection. Allow us to merge our consciousness with yours. Only then can we share the knowledge needed to save both our worlds. With a deep breath, Sarah stepped forward. The room lit up with a bright, piercing light, and she felt her consciousness slip away from her body. She was no longer just Sarah, she was connected to the Elandrians. She saw their world, their struggles, their dying planet. She felt their desperation, and in that moment, she knew she had no choice but to help. The fusion was intense. Images flooded her mind, and she understood everything, their technology, their culture, their plight. And she knew what needed to be done. As the connection ended, she returned to herself, gasping for air. But something had changed. The room was still, the whispers were gone, and Sarah was left with a deep sense of peace. You have saved us, Sarah, the leader said, its voice soft but full of gratitude. You have connected our worlds. And now, both will thrive. Sarah smiled, knowing that despite everything, she had made the right choice. She had bridged the gap, and in doing so, had saved not only the Elandrians but her own world as well.